How do you get ChatGPT to recommend your hair transplant clinic? So a few weeks back, we ran our massive 1,000 prompt study, and that was broadly across various types of health clinics. So this week, I wanted to dive into hair transplant clinics specifically. This is a space we love. We've had a few clients in this space. It's an interesting one because you've got sort of two categories. You got one category that is competing for local clientele, and you've got another one that is in the medical tourism space. They are in places like Turkey. Turkey is I think the biggest one in the world, and they're competing for people who are looking for somewhere else to go, or maybe it's out of reach for them in their country. If you're in the US, maybe your health insurance does not cover this. I'm not sure how it works in the UK, but a lot of these countries is very expensive, and so people will actually travel. Plus, if you can travel to Istanbul and do this and save money, that's a no-brainer, right? So that's what makes this space
with a flowing head of luscious hair.
Yeah, looking like Legolas. Yeah. I don't think that's quite how it works, but yeah, so this is a very interesting one. The strategy, I think, is going to differ a little bit on your positioning based on if you're going for domestic clientele versus international clientele. So the biggest thing that came out of this, again, we looked a little bit more about the international crowd here, was that ChatGPT was recommending clinics that were easy to verify, easy to compare, and safe to recommend. The safety part of this shows up over and over again, and we'll talk about how to actually be a part of that answer. Rather than being on the defensive end when, you have clinics from the US and the UK who are constantly bringing up safety aspects for traveling abroad for these kind of operations. Okay, so the first four things: building the right clinical authority assets. So these are going to be the things on your site that you need to have checked, the things you need to have in place. So as ChatGPT is doing this research, it's finding these assets and considering you to be one of the clinics it recommends. So building pages around real patient intent. So this is just that people aren't saying I'm looking for hair transplants, right? That's like the top level phrase. But when people are actually serious about these packages, about the service, they're looking for something very specific. The FUE, DHI, Sapphire, they're looking for something like this exact thing. They've typically done some research when they're at the bottom of the funnel phrases, when they're looking for the actual provider. So they're looking for those phrases. So you need pages for every single one. Own the international patient journey. As you can imagine, a lot of people are going to have more questions when they're traveling abroad for a treatment like this than they would if they're just, going to one that's near them. They go to one near them, maybe they do a quick consultation, right? They have fewer concerns. It's all around the treatment. Where if you're going to Turkey, you're flying to Turkey, or anywhere else, you have a lot of questions. What does that whole journey look like?
That's super interesting because me and my wife recently did some international medical treatment, and this was a huge part for me. I found a couple of places that just the information around everything outside of just the treatment was extremely sparse and well, how do I get from here to here? How is the communication? How do we know when to do X, Y, and Z before that? And the place that we went with was the place that was the most robust with that entire patient journey.
Yeah, see, that's very interesting because this isn't a vacation for people, right? I know I mentioned you might as well go to Istanbul, but for most people, they're not taking off an extra week to go sightseeing, right? So they don't have the same sort of trip planning that they would have for a trip, for a vacation, for a holiday, as you would say. So they want to know, okay, when I arrive at the airport, how do I actually get there? Who's picking me up? They want to know what every single step of the process looks like. And that is not just the treatment, but it's, getting there, it's where they're staying, it's who will be taking care of them after the treatment. So you need to have that entire journey mapped out. Just like Chris said, when you can't find it, you move on to a different clinic, right? So that, all other boxes checked, that you can win clients just from this. And it's the same thing with ChatGPT. You can win its recommendation based on this, because there will be a lot of questions people are asking in ChatGPT about the recovery process, what it's going to be like day to day when you travel to Istanbul. All right. Next one, make package pages a trust hub. So all-inclusive packages, that a lot of people like this, right? It's I want this service and I want the whole thing in one package. But you need to be very clear with what's included, each step, how it works. So very similar to Own the International Patient Journey, but this one is just have this all in one spot where it's very easy to find, easy for someone to book an entire package.
Again, exactly the reason that we went for the place that we did, because a lot of places was just so impossible to like try and calculate the costs. They weren't up front. They said there'd be additional charges here and then. It was like the place that we went with was just where it was just very, very clear as, day. This is what it would cost. There wouldn't be any additional charges. So you just felt trust.
And I think people would pay a little bit more for that, just to know, like, even if they piece together everything from another provider and they thought that's actually a bit cheaper, but just the uncertainty of what if there's something else, the all-inclusive, I think is, that's peace of mind. Okay, explain procedure selection clearly. So don't just say we offer this. You need to clearly explain what each one is, how they differ, the trade-offs, the recovery differences, clear comparison for everyone to see exactly the difference between those. And this will be very important when people are doing their research. People will ask these kind of questions. What is the difference between this and this? What is the recovery timeline for this versus this? Especially if they're not doing it in their home market where they just go home for this, if they're doing the recovery there. A lot of questions around that. So it's a great opportunity to gain some exposure there. All right, the next phase, the next 4 categories, prove trust beyond the website. So you've got all the things on site that you need to have. Now you've got to go build that trust off-site. And ChatGPT does, you can't just say, we're the best, take our word for it. It goes and it looks at all the clinics it's thinking about recommending. It goes and it looks to see, are they trustworthy? Do I fully trust them before I recommend them? So lead with clinical oversight and safety. So this is a risk-sensitive topic. So many patients are comparing tourism options, right? So you need to make the clinical ownership, candidacy checks, donor management, red flags, hygiene standards, and follow-up obligations easy to verify. We're going to get a bit more into this red flags. I think this is an interesting one. But yeah, all of that needs to be easy to verify for the user and for ChatGPT. Number 6, publish content that answers risk questions. So ChatGPT repeatedly leans on safety warnings, black market clinic discussions, and medical tourism educations. So it says clinics should be part of the conversation. Now, this is where this is the strategy for the domestic clinic. I say domestic clinics, but if you're like a US, UK clinic in a more expensive country, this is their strategy. And us working in PR for a long time, we've seen these PR campaigns, right? Of like the horror stories. So the thing to do here is to be a part of that conversation. You should be contributing to, these are the things to look out for. The same sort of content those clinics in the US and UK are creating, you can as well, like highlighting why you're a safe provider, because there are there are, some black market, there are some shady providers, but there are also loads of clinics that are just as good as anywhere else in the world. And you have to make that understood, and you can be a part of the conversation about talking about, here's what to look for, here's what makes a trustworthy provider. And it's not just about saying we're trustworthy, but when you're helping people to understand what to look for, you do become more trustworthy in that sense. All right. Earn validation from trusted third-party sources. This is the area we love the most. But yeah, it's not enough just to say these things on your own website. ChatGPT is going to look at associations, directories, comparison articles, editorial listicles, reviews, and expert commentary. So these are all things that are going to help making sure you're getting reviews on all the review platforms, getting featured in the press. This is a huge one for building up your brand. It works the same way in ChatGPT. These brand building exercises build trust. Number 8, turn reviews and case studies into evidence. So in this space, a lot of health spaces, 5-star reviews are table stakes, right? Like just saying it was great, I loved it. It doesn't do anything. You need reviewers to talk about the procedures they went, the travel support, the consultation quality, the aftercare, all of the things that are part of that journey, the before, during, and after journey. You want the reviewers to talk about that. That helps as ChatGPT is going through reviews. Those reviews help way more than just, is it a 5-star review? Is it a 4-star review?
Especially if you get things being talked about repeatedly on the same subject as well. Like they have a great aftercare program, or the aftercare is really good. Like and then ChatGPT will like derive consensus from that and then be like, this clinic has, according to users, excellent aftercare. So you can really sort of not control, but guide the narrative, can't you?
100%. And I think like a lot of people hear that and they think, oh yeah, you're just telling the reviewer what to say, but it's not the case. You can say like, if you ask for feedback, right? You can ask, what did you think about, the arrival process? What did you think about the pre-procedure process? You can ask about each stage, and then that's the information you can use for your review, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to like say this in your review, but if you ask them specifically, how was the recovery process? What did you like? That becomes the review. Okay, so those are the big things that if you're a hair transplant clinic, you're wanting to get recommended, these are the things you should be focusing on site and off-site.
Okay, awesome.